Lan was a second-year literature student at the University of Education. She had long hair, rarely spoke, and her eyes always seemed distant, not sad, but as if she was always thinking about something no one else could see. Everyone in class called Lan reserved, but no one felt she was distant. It's just that Lan never participated in those "answer roll call for me" games. Nor had she ever skipped class without reason. There were 80 students in the class. Every time roll call happened, Lan listened clearly, every name called, every "here" echoing back, and sometimes names with no response. On Monday morning, when Lan walked into class, the seat next to her was already occupied. A girl in a white dye, with hair flowing to mid-back, was bent over, taking notes. Lan was slightly surprised, since that seat was usually left empty. It used to be Trang's, her classmate who had passed away in an accident 3 months ago. She gently asked in a low voice, "Are you a new student?" The girl didn't look up, only scribbled a line quickly. Lan glanced sideways. The line read, "Trang, present." Lan felt a chill down her spine. Not because of the name, but because of the handwriting. It was exactly like Trang's, slanted, soft, and the G always leaned slightly to the left. The girl turned to her and smiled gently. Her voice was soft as the breeze. "We're in the same class. Lan, don't you remember?" Lan stood up. She looked around the class. Everyone was chatting, taking notes. No one noticed anything strange. She turned back, an empty chair. No one there. After class, Lan walked to the department lobby and sat by the balcony, gazing down at the courtyard. The class president walked by and called out, "Lan, it's rare to see everyone show up today. And weird, too. Trang's name is still on the roll call list." Lan looked up, her voice soft. "Did you hear her name called?" The class president nodded. "Of course, same as always, but this time, someone answered. Maybe a new student with the same name?" Lan didn't reply, but her hand gripped tightly the notebook in her bag. Inside was a list of classmates she had written herself. Trang's name, she had crossed it out long ago. But this morning, when she opened the notebook, the name was there again, as clear as if it had never been erased. Lan returned to her dorm. Still holding the notebook, she flipped to the attendance list. The name, Trang, once crossed out in red ink, was now clearly visible. Fully intact, as if no one had ever touched it. Lan whispered, "I remember clearly, I crossed it out myself." She took a correction pen and drew a line. But as soon as she looked away from the page, the name appeared again. This time, right behind it, was a small word, written slanted like a note. Present. That evening, Lan went to visit her classmate, Huyen, her closest friend since first year. Huyen was gluing pieces of a presentation and asked, "What brings you here suddenly? Your eyes look sunken." Lan sat down on the edge of the bed, speaking slowly. "Do you remember Trang?" Huyen paused, sighed. "Of course I do. I still haven't gotten used to her not being around. That day we were chatting in the group about going out to eat, then a few hours later, we got the news about the accident." Lan was silent for a moment, then explained clearly, "This morning, I saw someone sitting in her seat." Huyen frowned. "A new student?" Lan shook her head. "I asked, and she said she was Trang. And she smiled at me." Huyen suddenly froze. Her voice turned hoarse. "Are you serious?" Lan opened the notebook, showing Huyen. "I erased her name last month. But this morning, it came back on its own. Not only that, it had the words 'present' added." Huyen gently touched the page. Her hand was cold. A moment later, Huyen softly said, "Maybe we should ask the class president to get the official attendance list from the academic office. Let's see if that name is still there." The next day, Lan and Huyen went to the department's common room. The class president was typing on the computer. When she saw them, she asked, "What brings both of you here today?" Huyen smiled gently. "We'd like to ask for the latest official class list. If you can print it out for us?" She nodded, asking no further questions. A few minutes later, she brought out the student list with the academic office's signature and red stamp. Lan took it, scanning each line carefully. Near the bottom, she stopped. Entry number 78, Minh Thy Trang. Status: present. Last updated 3 days ago. Lan froze. Her hands trembled. Huyen stood beside her, unable to say a word. The class president continued casually. Trang's name hasn't been removed yet. Maybe the office is slow to update. But I remember, 3 days ago, I saw someone sign under Trang's name during the attendance for the education class. Lan quietly asked, "Did you see who signed?" She shook her head. Not really. But the signature looked exactly like Trang's. I could tell instantly it was her handwriting. At first, I thought someone faked her name to sign. But that day, the person who signed wore a white owl dye, had long hair, just like Trang. Lan asked softly, "Did you see her face?" The class president paused for a few seconds, then slowly said, "No." She kept her head down the whole time. When she finally looked up, she had already walked away. That night, Lan sat alone by the window. She opened her phone, scrolling through old photos taken with Trang. The last photo was from a camping trip at the start of the year. Trang was smiling brightly, holding a cup of milk tea, with a bit of whipped cream still on her lips. Lan smiled gently, then set her phone down. A breeze blew softly outside. Suddenly, the attendance app notification chimed. Lan jumped. She hadn't even opened the app today. The screen showed a new alert. Auto check-in. Minh Thy Trang, present. Time recorded, 10:13 p.m. Location: Lan's dorm, floor 2. Block C. Lan froze. Her eyes stared at the words, Lan's dorm. She stepped back, her palms icy cold. Then suddenly, came a knock, 3 slow, deliberate taps. She turned her head. The door was still shut. No one was in the hallway. But the knocking echoed again. This time, it came from inside the wardrobe. Her instinct took over. Lan slowly stepped toward the wardrobe. Her wardrobe had no lock, just a faded wooden handle. She swallowed hard, placed her hand on the knob, and slowly opened it. Nothing. Her white out dye was still hanging inside, along with a few old bags and a worn pair of sneakers. But at the bottom of the closet, there was a small black notebook with a leather cover. It wasn't hers. She sat down, carefully opened to the first page. No name, nothing at all. Just a list, a roll call sheet. Handwritten. The first name read, Minh Thy Trang, present. Second name, Le Huyen, waiting for roll call. Third name, Pham Lan, writing. Lan's breath quickened. Her hand trembled slightly. She immediately tore out the page, tossed it into the trash, and set it on fire. The flame was small, but the smell, like burning hair, was acrid. Lan opened the window, trying to take deep breaths. Outside, a white figure zipped past the window, fast and close. The next day, Lan told Huyen everything. Huyen turned pale, her voice shaking. I think we're being followed. Lan, last night, I dreamed of Trang too. She stood outside the window, said nothing, just stared, with eyes black as ink. Lan held her friend's hand, whispering, she doesn't want to be alone. She didn't come back to class to study, she came back to be marked present. And those who hear her name will gradually be called next. Huyen stammered, "You mean, one by one?" Lan nodded gently, then pointed to the list she kept in her bag. She's handwriting a new list. It might be something to replace her own death. Huyen stepped back. So what do we do now? Lan spoke quietly, enunciating every word. I'm going back to school. I want to return to the place where Trang had her accident. That place might still hold something untold. That afternoon, it started drizzling. Lan put on her hat and walked alone from Block C to the back gate of the campus, the area connected to Tran Van Dang Street. Near where Trang's accident happened 3 months ago, the narrow road was riddled with potholes. Unlit at night, moss-covered stone walls lined one side, dark bamboo groves the other. When Trang died, people said she was hit by a truck while crossing the road to get to the dorm. But Lan remembered clearly, that day, Trang called and said she was standing in the schoolyard, waiting for Lan to come study together. But the accident happened nearly 300 meters away from that spot. Lan stood beneath an old electrical transformer where bundles of incense and offerings of milk boxes had been left since the accident. She knelt down and noticed some incense sticks still intact, untouched. The wind swept through, cold and damp. She took 3 sticks from the wooden box and lit them with her lighter. The smoke spread, bitter, slightly sharp. Lan whispered, "Trang, if you're still around, say something. I'm not afraid." A vehicle sped by on the street. Then silence. But just as Lan turned to leave, she heard the faintest footsteps behind her. She turned. No one, just a stray cat by the power pole, staring directly at her. Lan slowly approached. At the cat's feet was a thin notebook, the cover soaked and misshapen from the rain. Lan bent down and picked it up. Though blurry, she could still recognize it. The cover said, Minh Thy Trang, Diary, in slanted, unmistakable handwriting. That night, back in her room, Lan dried the notebook and began to read. The ink had faded, but each line was still legible. The classroom is cold. Some days I sit through 4 periods and still shiver. Today, 2 classmates were missing at roll call. One was sick, the other, no one's found yet. They say I smiled to myself. Maybe they're right, but I'm never sitting alone. The friend beside me talks to me all the time. Lan frowned. She remembered clearly, when she was alive, Trang never sat near anyone but Lan and Huyen. Tonight, that friend told me to go to the back gate. Said there's something important to share. I felt uneasy, but I went, thinking it must be a classmate. I saw them. The face was blurry, but when they turned to leave, the shadow on the ground had no head. Lan dropped the notebook. Her chest rose and fell from the chill. The scent of incense from earlier still lingered faintly in the room. She picked up her phone and called Huyen. The call was answered immediately. "Hello, Lan? I was just about to call you." Lan asked quickly. "Have you ever noticed anyone in class, staring toward the window?" Huyen replied softly. "Yes, these past few days. VY. The girl at the back keeps turning to look outside. The other day I asked her, and she said, there's someone standing there, just watching us, like waiting to be called by name." Lan gripped her phone tightly. She said quietly, "I think it's time for the second person." On Wednesday morning, the classroom was noisier than usual. The students in the back kept whispering throughout the lesson. Lan walked in and had just sat down when Huyen leaned close and whispered, "Last night VY fainted." Lan froze. Why did she faint? Huyen responded quickly. Her friend said that during evening class, she saw someone who looked like Trang standing in the hallway. But there was no one scheduled on the 5th floor that night. The figure raised a hand to call VY, but had no face. Lan swallowed hard. Her hand clenched the notebook in her bag. Huyen continued, her voice even lower. VY didn't come to class today. We've only heard Trang's name a few times, and this is already happening. Lan looked up at the board. The lecturer was teaching. The class seemed normal. But outside the glass window, at the far end of the hall, in the corner beyond the light's reach, stood a figure in a white dye. Unmoving, Lan turned her face away. She didn't want to confirm it with her eyes. That night, Lan opened Trang's diary again, flipping to the last page. The slanted handwriting still stood clear. "I hear my name every day. No one crosses me out. I'm still being called, so I must be present." Lan placed her hand on the page. Cold. Her phone lit up. A message from an unknown number. Unsaved. "Tomorrow. It's the second person's turn. The empty seat needs someone to fill it." Lan tried calling back. The number was unreachable. She let out a long breath. Things were going too far. The next morning, just as the message predicted, the class president posted in the group chat, "Everyone, VY has filed for leave. Heard she's dealing with psychological issues. Will be taking a long break." Lan stared at the message. No one replied. Huyen messaged Lan privately, "I think we need to do something. If not, that list won't stop." Lan nodded. "I have a plan, but we'll have to go to school at night." Huyen hesitated. "At night? On the 5th floor?" Lan spoke firmly. "Only at night can we truly see what's taking Trang's place. If we don't stop it, we'll be next." That night, the air was still. No rain, No moon. Lan and Huyen walked from Block D to the main academic building. The doors were still open. The night security rarely patrolled past 8 p.m. Lan wore her backpack. Inside was Trang's diary and a red pen. Huyen mumbled, "Are you sure we should really go to the 5th floor? At this hour, no one studies there." Lan answered, eyes fixed on the stairs. "Exactly. No one's there, so that thing chose that spot. It's looking for someone to take Trang's seat." One by one, Huyen gripped Lan's hand tightly. The wooden stairs creaked beneath their feet. The hallway lights flickered dimly. On the 5th floor, silence blanketed everything, not a soul in sight. But at the end of the hall, room 504, their old classroom, was lit. Lan walked ahead, hand on the door. Inside was empty, except a roll call notebook sat open in the center of the teacher's desk. Huyen's voice trembled. The door was closed earlier. Who turned on the lights? Who placed that notebook? Lan didn't answer. She stepped in, approached the desk, and looked down. First page, like every list. Minh Thy Trang, present. Le Huyen, present. Pham Lan, present. Next name, waiting. Huyen looked at Lan and whispered, "It's written our names already." Lan took out the red pen and slashed a heavy line through Trang, present. The stroke cut diagonally across the entire page. Then she opened her bag, took out Trang's diary, and placed it beside the list. She spoke clearly, every word distinct. "I'm returning Trang's diary. I'm crossing that name off the class list. We don't want to take anyone's place." Suddenly, the wind rose inside the room. The glass windows slammed shut. The lights flickered. Lan grabbed Huyen's hand and shouted, "Trang, you were our friend. We loved you. But if you keep holding your seat in class, you'll drag others down with you. You don't study here anymore." The lights went out. In the darkness, a faint sob echoed, a girl's cry. Huyen clutched Lan's hand, trembling. "Lan, did you hear that?" Lan nodded. At the back of the classroom, a white figure rose and turned to face them. No face, no features, but the voice echoed like it came from the bottom of a deep well. "I don't want to be alone," Lan replied, unwavering. "You had us once, but if you keep staying like this, we'll have to follow." The wind stopped. The lights turned back on. No one was in the room. The roll call notebook had flipped back to the first page. Now, the first page was blank. Huyen clutched her chest, breathing hard. Lan gave a faint smile. "I think we've been spared." The next morning, Lan arrived at class earlier than usual. She didn't say anything to anyone, just quietly observed each person entering the room. Trang's old seat, still empty. No one touched it. A while later, Huyen also arrived. As she sat down, she leaned over and whispered, "I couldn't sleep last night. I kept seeing a shadow standing at the foot of my bed. Though I couldn't make out the face." Lan replied, voice low, "I couldn't sleep either, but I think that shadow isn't Trang anymore." Huyen frowned. "What do you mean?" Lan opened the small notebook in her hand and showed it to Huyen. The first page, where it once read, Minh Thy Trang, present, now only had a long streak of red ink. The name was gone, but in the bottom right corner, a new, smaller line had appeared. The seat remains unfilled. Huyen looked at the line and whispered, "So, even though Trang has left, whatever created that list still exists?" Lan nodded slowly. "It's not just Trang. It might be whatever called her in the first place." That afternoon, their class had a lesson in room 406. During the second period, the teacher suddenly paused and looked at the attendance list on her phone. She frowned slightly. "Is there a new student transferred into our class?" Everyone looked at one another. No one answered. She lightly flipped the attendance screen and read slowly, Minh Thy, unverified file. Registered seat, desk number 4. Outermost row. Lan turned her head. That was Trang's old seat. She suddenly felt a chill down her spine. Huyen, sitting next to her, whispered, "Have you ever heard that name before?" Minh Thy? Lan shook her head, but her heart was beating faster with each pulse. She pulled out her phone, opened the old class group, and searched the original student list from freshman year. There was no one named Minh Thy. That evening, Lan and Huyen went to the school's security office. The night staff was an older man with glasses who seemed to know a lot of the school's history. Lan asked gently, "Uncle, may I ask, did our school ever have a student named Minh Thy?" The man looked up at them, slightly surprised. Then after a moment of thought, he replied, "Minh Thy? That sounds familiar. Back when I first started here, around 10 years ago, there was a case." Lan and Huyen leaned in. He continued, "There was a female student, named Minh Thy, who went missing. They never found the body. But the classroom had strange signs. Desks were scattered, the door left wide open, and the board had the words written, 'I'm still present.' Back then, the school tried to cover it up, claimed she dropped out, and didn't release any notice." Huyen's voice trembled. "Which room was that?" The man replied slowly, 504, same room your class is using now." Lan sat silently. A chill swept through her spine. She suddenly understood. Trang wasn't the first. Thy was. Trang was only the next. The list has existed for a very long time. That night, Lan tossed and turned. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the dim white light of room 504, saw desk number 4, saw a figure in a white-out dye sitting with head bowed. Writing into the list, she sat up, pulled out Trang's old diary once more. But this time, she flipped to the very last page, pressing close to the edge. There, in tiny writing, as if done with diluted ink, was a line: "The list doesn't create itself. It needs someone to start, and someone to end it." Lan read every word slowly. Her heart chilled. She picked up her phone and texted Huyen. "I think, to stop this, we need to find the place where the list was first created." Huyen replied right away. "Then tomorrow let's go to the school library. The basement has archived records from previous years." The next day, during the quiet noon hour, they went down to the library basement. There was no staff there, just a damp room, thick with the smell of old paper and musty wood. Lan used her phone flashlight to search along the cabinets. Huyen stopped at cabinet number 12 marked with a faded label that read, "Class of 2009 to 2012. She called out softly, "Lan, come here." Lan walked over. Together they flipped through the folders, searching for the student lists. A moment later, Huyen froze. Here it is. The top of the page read clearly, Minh Thy, Class, Literature A, Student ID, 0911078. Lan's eyes moved to the bottom of the page. In the bottom right corner was a handwritten note, not part of the official form. Dropped out. Reason: no longer eligible for attendance. She suddenly said, "This note, it's not normal." Huyen trembled slightly. No one ever writes a reason like that. Lan nodded softly. "I think Thy was the first to be called. And maybe Thy was also the first to call someone else." On the way home, Lan remained deep in thought. Huyen asked, "What are you thinking about?" Lan replied quietly, "If that list keeps going, someone has to write in Trang's place. After Thy came Trang. After Trang, it's us?" Huyen looked at Lan, unsettled. "But I didn't write anything." Lan replied, very slowly, "Me neither. But, if it's not us, then someone must be writing already." That night, Lan sat in her dorm room, reopening the class attendance list on her app. Line by line, the familiar names scrolled by. But right after Huyen's name, a new line appeared. Roll caller. Being assigned. Lan shot to her feet. She whispered, "Someone is replacing Trang's role. Not the one being called, but the one doing the calling." She flipped open a blank notebook, the one she used for class notes. On the last page, though it had never been written in before, a single line now clearly showed. Successor, Lan. That entire night, Lan didn't sleep. She just sat there, staring at the final page of that notebook, where the words, successor, Lan, reappeared every time the light dimmed. She tried to cover it with correction tape, but even after erasing, the words came back, just like Trang's name had once returned in the old roll call list. Huyen called. Her voice was hoarse with fatigue. "I only slept for an hour. In my dream, I saw you standing on the podium, reading our names. Whoever got called, stood up and then disappeared." Lan gripped the phone, her voice slow. I don't think the list needs death anymore. It needs someone to keep the cycle going, recording new names. Keeping the empty seats filled. Huyen exhaled deeply. You're saying? Trang wasn't a victim, but someone who once wrote the list. Lan didn't answer. She pulled out Trang's old diary. Turned to the first page. A line once crossed out had returned. Trang wrote, "Thy called. I kept, the next will continue writing." The next morning, Lan went to school and sought out her homeroom teacher. As soon as the teacher saw her, she asked, "Why are you here at this hour? Class hasn't even started yet." Lan hesitated a moment, then gently asked, "Do you still have the old paper attendance log?" "Not the digital one." The teacher searched in her drawer and handed over a red-covered notebook. "Its edge is worn. Why do you need this version?" Lan didn't answer. She quickly flipped near the end, where Trang's name used to appear. Next to Minh Thy Trang, a smaller note, in different ink, slanted, read, "Role transferred, June 18th next, Lan." Lan dropped her hand. She looked straight at the teacher and asked firmly, "Who kept the attendance log before me?" The teacher paused, her face as if recalling something. After a moment, she said, "Last year, there was a class monitor named Khoa. He used to handle class records. Toward the final months of the semester, he started adding names that didn't exist in our class. Then, he dropped out suddenly. No explanation." Lan thanked her and stood up. In her mind, everything had begun to fall into place. That afternoon, Lan visited the school's infirmary, where records of students who deferred, dropped out, or transferred were kept. She spoke to the on-duty nurse. "I'd like to see the old records for Nguyen Minh Khoa, the former class monitor." The nurse checked the list, then said, "Yes, he withdrew in June of last year." The reason listed, mentally unfit to continue studies. Lan asked further, "Did anyone in class ever see him return to school afterward?" The nurse shook her head. "No, but oddly enough, a few months after he left, the class still submitted roll call logs signed by Khoa. The handwriting matched perfectly, every session, consistently." Lan left the room, heart heavy. She turned to Huyen, who was waiting in the hallway. "You get it now, right? Khoa was the one writing before. Then Trang. Now it's me." Huyen stood stunned. "If that's the case, how do we stop it?" Lan answered, eyes unwavering. "We have to cut off the roll call. No more successors. It has to end with me." That night, Lan returned to her dorm and placed the attendance log at the center of her desk. She laid out every related item. Trang's diary, the class photo with Minh Thy, the old paper attendance book. Everything had one thing in common, the phrase repeated over and over, "present." But it was present, even when that person was no longer alive. Lan sat down, turned on her desk lamp, and picked up a red pen. Huyen called at that moment. "I've got a bad feeling." "Lan, are you sure about erasing your name yourself?" Lan replied softly but firmly. "If I don't erase my name from the list, someone else will be called next. I can't let us stay stuck in this cycle. But if you do this, are you sure you'll make it out?" Lan paused for a moment. "I'm not sure, but I know, if no one ends it, more people will keep getting called. And none of us wants to see another person disappear." That night, Lan returned alone to room 504. She turned on the light and walked to desk number 4, Trang's old seat. On the desk, the attendance list remained open. On the last page, the line still read, "Successor, Lan." Lan pulled out her red pen and wrote a clear line beneath it. "I reject this role. I will not call anyone. The list ends here." The moment she finished writing, the classroom lights went out. A gust of wind burst through the windows, whipping the curtains. From the back of the room, a white figure stood and slowly floated toward Lan. The wind cut through her skin like ice. The white figure stopped in front of her, face still hidden. But the voice was familiar. "You're leaving the seat empty? If you don't call someone, you'll take the place yourself." Lan tightened her grip and said loudly and clearly, "I won't write anyone's name. And if someone has to keep the list, let it vanish with me." The figure bowed its head. From the middle of the notebook, the ink began to smear. The names of Trang, Thy, Khoa, all vanished. Only a blank page remained. The classroom lights turned back on. The wind stopped. The curtains settled. The room was silent, as if nothing had ever happened. The next morning, Lan didn't come to class. Friends messaged and called repeatedly, no reply. Huyen rushed to the dorm, knocking and calling loudly. Lan, open up. No response. The door was locked from the inside. But the landlord said she never saw Lan leave the room last night. In the end, when they forced the door open, the room was empty. No one inside. Only the attendance notebook lay in the middle of the table. The final page had a single line, written in red ink. Pham Lan, no longer listed. 1 week later, class life returned to normal. No one mentioned Trang, and no one asked about Vy or Lan. Lan's name still remained on the student list, but no one erased it. And no one marked her present. Huyen sat alone at their old table. To her left, the seat that once belonged to Lan was empty. In the morning light, sunbeams filtered through the window, shining on that empty spot, brighter than any day before. At the end of class, she quietly walked to room 504, where everything had begun. The room was still, desks untouched, the board clean and blank. On the teacher's desk remained the red-covered notebook Lan had kept. Huyen stepped forward and opened to the last page. No names, just one faint, slanted red line. No more names will be written. She gently closed the notebook, placed her hand on the cover, and whispered, I don't know if you can still hear us. But if your silence was your way of protecting us, then we'll remember you. No need for names, no need for roll calls. Outside the hallway, the wind gently stirred, the flame tree leaves trembled, scattering soft shadows on the floor. As Huyen stepped out of the room, she paused before the glass door. Reflected in the glass, she was alone behind her. No one sat at desk number 4. She smiled softly, then kept walking. Elsewhere, far from the noise of the school, there was a small room with a window facing the sky. At the center of the room sat a white desk. On it, a notebook. Now closed. No one touched it, and no one would open it again. On the spine of the notebook, only a faint stain of ink remained, as if someone had erased the name for good.